So you would know, okay, like what's going to happen with your bass and your treble and all this other sort of stuff. You know, not me. That's just not me. For us, we're going to have a range for hearing. Frequency is a number of cycles per second that an object is vibrating back and forth. We're going to see what that object is in the ear that's going to be vibrating back and forth. We're going to hear in the range from about 20 to 20,000 hertz. Normal speech is somewhere between 1,500 and 5,000. But if people talk really loud, they're going to exceed that. Or if they talk really low, they're going to not need it. All right? So, but normal speech, somewhere between 1,500 and 5,000. How loud something is basically the energy of that sound. If you are listening to your favorite music and your favorite song comes on, what do you tend to do with your volume? You turn it up because you're going to sing with it, okay? Dance, whatever the case might be, all right? What you're getting is the energy of that sound. Intensity, and this sound energy, we're going to know it as our amplitude. This usually gets expressed in decibels. Now, you might see that a jet is so many decibels. A refrigerator running is so many decibels. The sound of a car is so many decibels. But here's the kicker. It is not linear. Meaning, if you go from 1 decibel to 2, you didn't just increase by 1. This is like the metric system. It increases by a factor of 10. So if I go from 1 decibel to 2, it didn't increase by 1, it increased by 10. If I went from 1 to 3, what did it increase by? 100. Because 1 to 2 is 10, 2 to 3 is 10 more. So 10 times 10 is 100. Do you see how I'm getting that? Like I said, like the metric system. So if you had something that was the sound at roughly 3 decibels, but then you're exposed to something like a jet that might be 50 decibels, do you see the difference in the increase? For each level you moved up, you increased by a factor of 10. So that is going to be that energy hitting your eardrum. And then the ear having to make sure that because you got exposed to that high level, that you don't go deaf. If it were not for this maze that exists for hearing and the fluids that are present, your own voice would make you go deaf. So, this is a very important sense. Normal conversation is about 60 decibels. When things get above or near about 110 to 120 decibels, it's going to actually be painful. It's going to be sensed as pain. And have you ever seen stuff make a person's ear bleed?
In movies.
In movies. Why did it do that?
It ruptured the eardrum.
Ruptured the eardrum. Because it was too loud.
So if like babies are born, you know how some children are born deaf. Is it because they don't have the fluid or the tissues? Is it possible that they were born with hearing, but because when they first heard noise and they didn't have that fluid or tissue, that's when they went deaf?
The situation of being deaf has so many causes, okay? If children are born deaf, there's usually some congenital defect. Now, going deaf after they're born, that could be a range of issues, okay? But whatever happened killed all of the sensory cells, which for hearing is going to be stereocilia. Going deaf, that could, except for the congenital defect, which means the child is born deaf. The other causes are going to be death to those sensory cells. The death to those sensory cells can range in many ways. It could be exposure to loud noise over a long period of time. It could just, there are just so many reasons as to why. I don't know if y'all notice, but I'm constantly doing this number. Like if Brian said, I'm like, do what? Okay? Any ideas why?
Is it funnel? Like
It does help to funnel because that's what this outer ear does. The outer ear is like a funnel to get these sound waves to me, okay, or to our ears. But what's the real reason that I can't really hear Brian or Anthony or Marlies?
because you can't pick up on like certain pitches, like you know how like
You might not be able to pick up on certain pitches.
The sensory nerves in your ear get old.
My sensory nerves in my ears are old. They are not getting replaced. And over the 53 years of my lifespan, I have exposed them to a lot of damage.
So do planes do damage to your ears?
Do what?
If you ride planes a lot throughout your lifespan, does that do a lot of damage to your ears?
Planes? Yes. So, lots of things over my lifespan that I've done to damage these sensory cells. And that's why I'm like, huh, what? Because I truly can't hear it. I can't. So, when we think about the ear, anatomy is going to be important. The outer or the external, like I was saying, and your textbook is going to have a good example of like, you know, what each part's called and the elastic tissue that makes it up and all that sort of stuff. My outer ear, okay, it is a funnel. Because if you take your ears and if you move them around, you will hear differently. So it is a funnel for those waves coming in. Our auditory canal, that external acoustic meatus, meatus meaning the hole of the canal, that is going to be my passageway. It goes through my temporal bone because the remaining parts of my hearing need to be safe inside bone. Note what I just said. The remaining parts of the anatomy of my ear need to be encased in bone so that they are protected. Because before other senses were improved upon for man over the geological time scale, they depended on their hearing to survive. And because we are stereoscopic, okay, we're in stereo, because we got two, we're not mono, all right? It allowed them to be very aware of their surroundings and any dangers that were lurking. So, my outer ear and that auditory canal, you've got special cells that give rise to cerumen, which is our earwax. And the goal of earwax, keep the bugs out. Seriously. That is the goal. Keep the bugs out so the hearing can get in. Don't know if y'all knew that. So now that I've gotten past that external ear, my middle ear, I'm now in bone. It is in the tympanic cavity of my temporal bone. Our eardrum is known as the tympanic membrane. It is considered the obstacle or our anatomy that is separating the outer from the middle ear. We're going to find that the middle ear is innervated by the sensory portion of my vagus and trigeminal nerves. The middle ear, the tympanic cavity, it continues into that mastoid process. You guys remember that from part 1 when you were learning the parts of the skull? By way of my auditory tube, also known as the eustachian or the pharyngotympanic tube. In children, this is where a lot of the ear infections occur. Because in children, rather than the tube pointing downward because they haven't grown yet, okay, their tube is more straight and not, pointing downward. So what do they usually do if it becomes a real problem? They go in and they put in tubes. so that drainage can occur.